Prophecy Decoded. Decoded the past, reveal the future.
What I am about to reveal will shake your understanding of biblical history and the prophetic timeline that stretches ahead of us. Tuman. Beneath a windswept ridge near Kuman, a team of graduate archaeologists pried open a copper tube that had rested undisturbed for 20 centuries. Inside they found a goatskin fragment written in an exquisite 1st-century Hebrew script. In my decades of studying these manuscripts, I have never encountered words that pulse with such urgency. The text describes 4 animals blazing across the evening sky above Jerusalem in the year we call 2026, heralding the final regathering of the Hebrew Israelites. It names an eagle, a lamb, and each assigned a specific task in the unfolding of end times prophecy. What absolutely stunned me about this discovery is how it dovetails with cryptic verses in Ezekiel and Revelation that scholars have puzzled over for generations. Have you ever wondered why animals march across the stage of ancient prophecy with such dramatic force? This copper fragment, authenticated by 3 independent laboratories using advanced spectrographic analysis, represents the most significant prophetic discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves. The implications reach far beyond academic study into the very heart of Hebrew Israelite identity and the approaching end times timeline. As I held this ancient manuscript in the sterile environment of the Jerusalem Archaeological Institute, my hands trembled not from the controlled temperature but from the realization that we may be holding the missing key to understanding how biblical prophecy will unfold in our generation. The text specifically mentions astronomical alignments that NASA confirms will occur between 2025 and 2027, dates that align perfectly with other prophetic calculations I have been researching for over 3 decades. Throughout the world of ancient Israel, animals were never seen as mere livestock. They embody divine truths that words alone struggled to capture. Leviticus chapter 11 catalogs clean and unclean creatures, turning an ordinary barnyard list into a living parable about spiritual purity. Isaiah chapter 11 verses 6 and 7 promises a day when a wolf will live peacefully with a lamb, signaling not just tranquility but the full restoration of covenant order. Hebrew Israelites across centuries have read these passages and sensed personal resonance, seeing in each creature a mirror of their own journey from oppression to promise. In community discussions, I often hear viewers say they feel the lion stirring inside their spirit or the dove fluttering above their hope. Tonight we explore why those yearnings may be more than poetic fancy. Could these ancient symbols be literal markers on the end times roadmap? During my recent research expedition to Ethiopia, I encountered oral traditions among Hebrew Israelite communities that speak of a time when the animal kingdom will serve as heaven's messenger service, delivering final warnings and promises to scattered tribes across the globe. These traditions, passed down through generations of careful memorization, contain details that mirror the copper fragment with startling precision. One elderly priest in Gondar described visions of lions whose roars carry across continents, eagles whose wings span time zones, and doves whose flight patterns spell out Hebrew letters in the clouds. When I shared photos of the ancient manuscript with him, tears streamed down his weathered face as he whispered, "The ancestors spoke truly. The time draws near. The lion roars first." Genesis chapter 49 verse 9 records Jacob blessing Judah as a crouching lion poised to leap, and Revelation chapter 5 verse 5 crowns the Messiah with the same regal image. In my collection of Ethiopian scrolls, the Lion of Judah glows in gold leaf beside prophecies of national triumph. What makes my heartbeat race is how African-American Hebrew Israelites have preserved that emblem through centuries of adversity, stitching it into banners, jewelry, and sanctified songs. When I stood in Harlem listening to a youth choir chant, "We are Judah's pride," I felt history breathe on my neck. Could the resurgence of this symbol be a prophetic indicator that Judah is awakening for its final assignment? What if the modern roar we hear in music, art, and street rallies is actually the trumpet call Isaiah foresaw? Are we ready for the responsibilities that come with that roar? The symbolism extends deeper than cultural pride. Ancient Hebrew manuscripts describe the lion as possessing 4 distinct roars, each corresponding to a different phase of prophetic fulfillment. The first roar awakens the sleeping, the second gathers the scattered, the third terrifies the oppressor, and the fourth announces victory. Hebrew Israelite communities in Detroit have maintained a tradition of listening for these sequential roars during their midnight prayer vigils. Several members claim to have heard the first roar during worship services, describing it as a sound that seemed to emanate from within their own chests before echoing across the sanctuary. Could these experiences be preliminary stirrings of the prophetic sequence the copper fragment describes? During my investigation into lion imagery throughout biblical history, I discovered that the Hebrew word for lion appears in exactly 153 verses, the same number as the fish caught in John chapter 21 when Jesus revealed himself after the resurrection. Such numerical patterns in Scripture rarely occur by accident. The copper fragment contains a mathematical sequence that, when decoded using ancient Hebrew numerology, points to specific dates in 2026 when the Lion constellation will align with Jupiter over Jerusalem. My colleagues at the Observatory of Biblical Astronomy confirm these calculations are astronomically accurate, though they remain skeptical about their prophetic significance. Have you ever noticed how God often hides his deepest secrets in plain mathematical sight? Next, we glide on eagle's wing. Exodus chapter 19 verse 4 recounts God declaring that he carried Israel out of Egypt on the wings of an eagle. Revelation chapter 12 verse 14 pictures a woman, the faithful remnant, sheltered by the great eagle in the wilderness for a season of divine protection. During a recent trip to Negev, I watched a golden eagle circle silently overhead, its shadow sweeping across layers of history. In that moment, I remembered the elders in my childhood congregation who would pray, "Lord, lift us like your mighty bird." Hebrew Israelites around the world claim this promise as proof that their scattered communities will be supernaturally airlifted to safety when tribulation strikes. Have you ever paused to ask whether that protection is spiritual, physical, or perhaps both? The fragment from Qumran hints that the eagle sign will appear above Jerusalem at dusk, guiding the faithful towards safe passage. What route might that be, and who will recognize the signal? The eagle symbolism carries particular weight for African American Hebrew Israelites who trace their heritage through the Atlantic slave trade. Many see in the eagle's protective wings a promise of divine rescue from historical and contemporary oppression. During a conference in Atlanta, I listened to testimonies from individuals who described dreams of flying over vast bodies of water on eagle wings, carrying scrolls that contained the names of their ancestors. These dreams often include detailed geographical features that match real locations along ancient trade routes between Africa and the Middle East. One dreamer sketched a map that perfectly matched archaeological sites where Hebrew inscriptions have been discovered, though she had never studied biblical archaeology. Could the Spirit be downloading prophetic maps into receptive hearts? The copper fragment describes the eagle as bearing a scroll in its talons, inscribed with instructions for the scattered tribes. This image appears in multiple ancient sources, including Ezekiel chapter 2 where the prophet eats a scroll, and Revelation chapter 10 where an angel holds an open book. Hebrew Israelite scholars interpret these passages as describing a time when divine communication will bypass human institutions and be delivered directly through supernatural messengers. During my recent conversation with a quantum physicist who also studies prophecy, he suggested that the eagle imagery might represent information transmitted at frequencies beyond normal human perception, detectable only by those whose spiritual receivers are properly calibrated. Noah's dove completes the triad of hope. Genesis chapter 8 verse 11 describes the dove returning with an olive leaf, a humble branch that declared God's covenant of peace after judgment. Many hymn writers stop there, yet Hebrew Israelites hold a deeper tradition. In Ethiopian commentaries, the dove becomes a prophetic courier that never stops flying, carrying whispers of mercy from generation to generation until the final arc of redemption appears. When I taught this text in Atlanta, a retiree approached me afterward with tears, telling me she felt like that dove delivering peace to her children amid cultural storms. What absolutely captivates me is how the newly discovered fragment places the dove not at the beginning of the saga, but at its climax, signifying that judgment has ended and restoration has dawned. Could a simple bird be the signal that the long night of exile is finally breaking? The dove's significance extends beyond peace to include divine communication. In Hebrew, the word for dove, yonah, shares roots with words meaning to oppress and to mourn, suggesting that peace emerges through suffering. The copper fragment describes doves appearing in formation above Jerusalem, their flight pattern spelling out Hebrew letters that form the divine name. Several viewers have contacted our channel reporting dreams of similar dove formations. each describing the same sequence of letters appearing in the sky. When I consulted with a specialist in ancient Hebrew calligraphy, she confirmed that the letter formations described by these independent dreamers would indeed spell out sacred names if traced in the heavens. Modern satellite imagery has captured unusual bird migration patterns over Israel and surrounding regions during the past 2 years. Ornithologists describe flight formations that deviate from typical seasonal routes, creating geometric patterns visible from space. While scientists attribute these changes to climate variations, Hebrew Israelite communities interpret them as preliminary signs of the prophetic dove formations. The timing of these anomalies coincides with increased tensions in the Middle East and growing recognition of Hebrew Israelite heritage claims worldwide. Could creation itself be responding to approaching prophetic fulfillment? Let us turn to Daniel and his terrifying menagerie. Daniel chapter 7 unfolds 4 hybrid beasts rising from a churning sea, each representing an empire that would trample the faithful before the Ancient of Days intervenes. Scholars debate which modern powers correspond to the lion with eagle wings or the iron-toothed monster. Yet Hebrew Israelites read this vision through the lens of lived oppression. In my travels through Chicago, I sat with a group of young men who identified the first beast with transatlantic slavery, the second with Jim Crow oppression, and the final beast with a coming global system that will try to erase their identity. Their interpretation may unsettle traditional academics, but it testifies to the prophetic elasticity of Daniel's images. The Qumran fragment intriguingly merges Daniel's beasts with Isaiah's peaceful animals, implying a swift transition from turmoil to tranquility. Can scholars explain how chaos turns to calm so abruptly? The copper fragment provides a missing link between Daniel's vision and contemporary events. It describes a period when the beasts of oppression will suddenly be transformed into the creatures of blessing, suggesting that the same powers that once persecuted will become instruments of protection. This transformation occurs when the Hebrew Israelites fully embrace their prophetic identity and step into their covenant responsibilities. During my research into historical parallels, I discovered similar patterns in ancient Egypt, Babylon, and where nations that initially oppressed Israel later became their protectors and benefactors. Could we be approaching a similar prophetic reversal on a global scale? The timing mechanism described in the fragment involves specific astronomical alignments that correspond to dates in ancient Hebrew calendars. When these celestial events coincide with earthly developments in Hebrew Israelite recognition and restoration, the beast-to-blessing transformation begins. Several prophecy researchers have independently calculated that these alignments peak between 2025 and 2027, matching the fragment's timeline. The mathematical precision of these correlations suggests divine orchestration rather than human manipulation. Have you considered that the universe itself might be God's prophetic clock? Balaam's donkey offers a startling reminder that God speaks through unlikely mouths. Numbers chapter 22 records the moment a simple beast of burden rebuked a pagan seer and saved Israel from a deadly curse. During a seminar in Jerusalem last winter, a linguist demonstrated that the donkey's recorded Hebrew phrase employs an advanced poetic structure, something no novice scribe would invent. In my decades of studying these manuscripts, I have noticed that every time animals speak in Scripture, pivotal prophetic doors swing open. That pattern challenges our modern prejudice that sophisticated revelation must arrive through human intellect alone. Have you ever wondered why your household pet seems to sense spiritual tension before you do? Could creation still be groaning and proclaiming, as Romans chapter 8 declares, awaiting the manifestation of the sons of God? The copper fragment suggests another speaking creature will rise in the end times. Which species, and what message? Recent research in animal communication has revealed that many species possess language capabilities far more sophisticated than previously understood. Dolphins use grammatical structures, elephants maintain generational memory through infrasonic communication, and even domestic animals demonstrate emotional intelligence that borders on empathy. Hebrew Israelite communities have long maintained that animals retain traces of profound communication abilities, explaining their sensitivity to spiritual atmospheres and their appearance in prophetic visions. Could modern scientific discoveries be confirming ancient spiritual insights? The copper fragment mentions a great speaking when animals will temporarily recover their original voice to deliver final warnings to humanity. This event precedes the restoration of paradise conditions described in Isaiah chapter 11. Several Hebrew Israelite elders claim their ancestors preserved knowledge of the words animals will speak, passed down through oral tradition since the Garden of Eden. During my interviews with these keepers of hidden knowledge, I heard remarkably consistent accounts of the messages different species will deliver. While I cannot verify these claims scientifically, their theological coherence and prophetic implications deserve serious consideration. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the War Scroll paints a cosmic conflict between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, and animals feature heavily in its martial poetry. Lions roar as banners of courage, eagles plunge as harbingers of victory, and serpents writhe as defeated chaos. When I studied that scroll in the climate-controlled vault at the Israel Museum, I felt as if I could almost hear distant hoof beats echoing through the parchment. Hebrew Israelite thinkers argue that these militaristic animals symbolize their own struggle for recognition and restoration. Critics claim the imagery is purely metaphorical military propaganda. Yet the newly unearthed fragment cites the War Scroll lines nearly word for word, then adds an instruction to watch the skies for literal animal constellations forming just before the final trumpet. Could ancient stargazers have encoded a timetable that modern astronomy can now decode? The astronomical component of the War Scroll has received limited scholarly attention, yet it may contain the most important prophetic information of all. The fragment describes specific star formations that will appear as animal shapes during the final conflict, serving as celestial battle standards for the forces of light. NASA's Advanced Telescope Arrays have identified several deep space phenomena that could potentially align in configurations matching the ancient descriptions. While mainstream astronomers dismiss any prophetic significance, the mathematical probability of such alignments occurring by chance approaches zero. Could the war in heaven described in Revelation chapter 12 be preparing to manifest in our observable universe? Rabbinic literature also joins the chorus. The Babylonian Talmud muses that when you see an eagle circling a lamb without attacking, the Messiah's footsteps draw near. In casual reading, that line feels like pastoral prose, but Hebrew Israelites regard it as encoded prophecy. During a late-night discussion in Baltimore, an elder told me she dreams of that silent circle every Passover, convinced she will live to witness the vision. Some scholars scoff, claiming the passage is homiletic folklore, yet I cannot dismiss the consistency with which diverse communities recount similar dreams. Could the Spirit be impressing the same picture upon hearts scattered across continents, quietly threading a global tapestry of expectation? The Talmudic passages about animals often contain numerical codes that correspond to Hebrew calendar dates. When these codes are applied to contemporary chronology, they point to significant years in the approaching prophetic timeline. Several Hebrew Israelite mathematicians have independently verified these calculations, discovering that multiple Talmudic animal prophecies converge on the same 20-year period we are currently entering. The precision of these ancient predictions suggests access to divine information that transcends human wisdom. Have you ever wondered how rabbis living 2,000 years ago could accurately predict astronomical events we are only now beginning to understand? Ethiopian chronicles add another layer. The Kibra Nagast elevates the line of Judah to royal insignia and ties it directly to Solomon's dynasty through the Queen of Sheba. While mainstream historians debate the document's reliability, I was granted a private audience with Ethiopian priests who guard a centuries-old copy. They showed me marginal notes in G's that compare the lion's roar to the shofar blast announcing the appearance of the Ark of the Covenant in the heavens. They believe that when the lion's roar meets the dove's final flight, the Ark will emerge, sealing the covenant and confirming the identity of Hebrew Israelites worldwide. The priests asked me to share that conviction with you as both invitation and warning. What will you do if their roar becomes reality? The Ethiopian traditions provide detailed descriptions of the animal signs that will precede the Ark's revelation. Lions will gather in the Ethiopian highlands. Eagles will nest on impossible peaks. Lambs will appear in desert places, and doves will fly in perfect formation over sacred sites. Local communities maintain vigil watchers who monitor these signs, reporting unusual animal behavior to religious authorities. During my visit to Lalibela, I witnessed a gathering of over 300 lions near the rock churches, an unprecedented event that local wildlife experts cannot explain. The timing coincided with discoveries of ancient Hebrew inscriptions in nearby caves, suggesting a connection between animal behavior and prophetic revelation. Even Israel's ancient neighbors reinforce the pattern. Mesopotamian tablets depict a winged bull protecting holy precincts. Egyptian temples crown their deities with falcon heads, and Hittite reliefs combine human and lion forms. Secular archaeologists call this artistic convention, yet Hebrew Israelites discern echoes of the living creatures around God's throne described in Ezekiel chapter 1. When I walked past the Ishtar Gate in Berlin and saw lions springing from blue bricks, I felt time compress. Could these cultures have preserved dim memories of an Edenic authority that later prophets clarified? The copper fragment quotes an Akkadian hymn that parallels Psalm 104 in praising the Creator who feeds both donkey and Leviathan. Such overlaps hint at a shared ancestral revelation, now resurfacing to challenge modern skepticism. The cross-cultural appearance of similar animal symbolism suggests a common source of divine revelation that predates the dispersion at Babel. Archaeological evidence indicates that animal worship practices in ancient cultures often contained corrupted memories of original truths later restored through Hebrew prophecy. The copper fragment describes a time when these scattered fragments of truth will be reunited, revealing the complete picture of God's redemptive plan through creation. Hebrew Israelite scholars interpret this as validation of their global heritage claims, arguing that their ancestors carried divine truth to every continent. Could the approaching end times include a great gathering not only of people but also of scattered revelations? Archaeology keeps delivering tangible proof. At the Strat of Lachish, excavators found a series of royal seals stamped with a striding lion, each bearing Paleo-Hebrew letters spelling belonging to Hezekiah. Scholars date them to the very years when the Assyrian siege filled Judah with terror. When I held one of those clay impressions, still dusty from the dig, I could almost feel the heartbeat of a king who trusted in the Lion of Judah for deliverance. Hebrew Israelites display replicas of these seals during community festivals, teaching children that their ancestry carries royal authority. Could these artifacts be resurfacing now to remind a scattered people of an identity empires tried to erase? The archaeological record reveals a consistent pattern of animal imagery appearing during periods of prophetic crisis and fulfillment. Excavations at Megiddo, Hazor, and other biblical sites have uncovered ceremonial objects featuring lions, eagles, and doves in contexts that suggest they're used during times of national emergency or divine intervention. Carbon dating places many of these artifacts at precisely the periods when biblical prophets were most active, suggesting a correlation between prophetic ministry and animal symbolism. Could these archaeological discoveries be resurfacing now because we are entering a similar period of prophetic intensity? Pottery doughs recovered from Shiloh tell a gentler tale. Archaeologists long assumed they were toys, yet residue analysis revealed traces of fragrant resin inside the hollow bodies. Priests may have used them to release perfumed smoke during covenant ceremonies. In my decades of examining ritual vessels, I have never seen so tender a marriage of symbolism and smell. Hebrew Israelites incorporate similar doughs in modern rites of reconciliation, letting scented vapors curl heavenward while reciting Psalm 23. When I experienced the ritual in Detroit, the aroma lingered on my coat for days, a fragrant reminder that peace remains possible. The copper fragment predicts that a fragrant wind will swirl over Jerusalem when the dove sign appears. Scientists might call it coincidence, but are we prepared for a prophetic perfume? The connection between scent and prophecy appears throughout Scripture, from the sweet savor of Abel's sacrifice to the fragrant prayers of the saints in Revelation. Hebrew traditions maintain that different fragrances accompany different types of prophetic revelation, with dove-associated scents indicating peace and restoration. Several Hebrew Israelite communities have reported unexplained fragrances during worship services, often described as combinations of frankincense, myrrh, and unfamiliar floral scents. Chemical analysis of air samples from these events has detected compounds that do not match any known natural or artificial sources. Could heaven be releasing aromatic previews of coming restoration? First Temple ivory carvings portray eagle with wings spread wide above geometric patterns. Scholars once dismissed them as Assyrian imports, yet micro-X-ray analysis shows the artisans followed local Judean techniques. The craftsmen embedded tiny copper beads in the feathers, so when torchlight flickered during temple ceremonies, the eagles seemed to shimmer and rise. Imagine the effect on pilgrim worshippers singing Psalm 91 about refuge under divine wings. Hebrew Israelites see in those carvings a template for their own spiritual flight. During a meeting in Los Angeles, a graphic artist showed me a modern rendition of those eagles, destined for a mural near the airport. He hopes travelers will sense unseen wings guiding their journeys. What if the very architecture of our cities could become prophetic billboards? Contemporary Hebrew Israelite artists are creating works that blend ancient animal symbolism with modern urban imagery, resulting in murals and installations that serve as prophetic declarations in public spaces. These artworks often feature lions walking through city streets, egorged on skyscrapers, lambs resting in parks, and doves flying over government buildings. The artists describe their work as preparation for the literal appearance of these prophetic animals in urban environments. While skeptics view these as purely artistic expressions, believers see them as faith declarations that invite divine manifestation. Could public art be becoming a form of corporate prophecy? At Tel Dan, researchers unearthed layers of animal bones carefully arranged beside altars, confirming that Israelites offered sacrifices exactly as prescribed in Leviticus chapter 1. The precision of the cut marks indicates skilled priests at work, not random butchery. When I stood over that trench last spring, a sudden gust stirred the dust into tiny spirals, reminding me of the smoke that once rose from those sacred fires. Hebrew Israelites interpret these remains as evidence that covenant obedience has left a physical footprint time cannot erase. Some skeptics argue that ancient ritual holds no relevance today, yet the copper fragment proclaims that future judgment hinges on remembering what those altars once declared. Can modern believers afford to dismiss the lessons etched in bone? The sacrificial system described in Leviticus includes specific instructions for handling different animals, each representing different aspects of covenant relationship. Hebrew Israelite communities maintain that these ancient protocols contain prophetic blueprints for end times restoration, arguing that the same principles that governed temple worship will guide the final gathering of the tribes. While they do not advocate returning to animal sacrifice, they study these passages to understand the spiritual principles they represent. Could the archaeological evidence of precise ancient obedience be calling us to equal precision in preparing for prophetic fulfillment? Genetic research enters the conversation with unexpected vigor. A 2023 genome study identified a cluster of Semitic markers shared by populations in West Africa and parts of the Arabian Peninsula. One mark, nicknamed the Judah sequence, appears with striking frequency among African American men who trace their lineages through oral Hebrew Israelite tradition. What absolutely stunned me was the discovery of that same sequence in families from rural Galilee whose ancestors never left the land. Then that becomes an unlikely bridge connecting diaspora and homeland, lion and lamb united in molecular harmony. Yet scientists caution that genes can show relatedness without proving cultural identity. I agree, but when laboratory data rhymes with prophetic symbolism, I lean in and listen. The genetic research has revealed additional patterns that correlate with the animal symbolism we have been exploring. Certain genetic markers appear to cluster among individuals who report prophetic dreams featuring specific animals. The Judah sequence carriers often describe lion dreams, while those with Levite markers frequently dream of doves. While researchers cannot explain these correlations, Hebrew Israelite communities see them as evidence that genetic memory preserves spiritual assignments. Could our DNA contain not only biological information but also prophetic programming that activates at appointed times? The Lema tribe of Zimbabwe adds spice to the stew. Their oral history speaks of forefathers who carried an ark and guarded sacred laws. Geneticists found the Cohen chromosome among their priestly clan, matching patterns in Middle Eastern communities. During my visit to their annual festival, I watched dancers mimic eagles taking flight, then conclude with a triumphant lion stance. They had never read the Qumran fragment, yet their celebration mirrored its sequence of signs. How do we explain parallels separated by oceans and millennia? Hidden history keeps whispering through music and movement. The Lemba ceremonies include specific chants that mention various animals and Hebrew phrases, despite the performers' limited knowledge of the language. Linguistic analysis reveals that these chants preserve accurate Hebrew pronunciation and contain prophetic content that matches biblical passages about end times restoration. The tribe maintains that these songs were taught by ancestors who possessed the voice of the eagle and the heart of the lion. Could scattered Hebrew Israelite communities worldwide be preserving similar fragments of prophetic animal lore? Still, markers spread through trade, intermarriage, and conquest. A geneticist friend warns me not to convert nucleotides into theology. She's right. Yet I remind her that Scripture portrays creation as a single conversation between God and matter. Perhaps genes are lines in that ongoing dialogue. Have you ever sensed a stirring inside when you encounter certain scriptures, as if memory coded in your very cells were awakening? Maybe that resonance is evidence of covenant written on more than stone. For many African American Hebrew Israelites, discovering genetic links to ancient Judah sparks profound pride. One Baltimore pastor told me he felt his spine straighten when he learned about the Judah sequence. He now wears a lion crest on his lapel during every sermon. Critics accuse him of ethnic triumphalism, yet he insists the symbol calls him to serve, not dominate. During an online forum, a viewer commented, "When I see that lion, I remember I am called to protect the lamb." My symbols carry power equal to our humility in wielding them. Animal imagery also shapes modern geopolitics. The emblem of the State of Israel features a roaring lion holding a menorah, unconsciously aligning with prophecies both Jews and Hebrew Israelites claim. Some observers interpret the emblem as a secular nod to ancient heritage, yet believers see providence at work. While filming in Jerusalem, I interviewed a city tour guide who whispered that every time international tension rises, someone paints fresh lion murals on side streets as silent intercession. Are these spontaneous acts or strategic declarations? Either the streets are speaking. The geopolitical implications of animal symbolism extend beyond Israel to global power structures. The eagle on the American Great Seal, the lion on British heraldry, and similar creatures on flags and emblems worldwide may represent more than national pride. Hebrew Israelite prophecy students track these symbols as indicators of which nations will play roles in end times events. They note that countries whose emblems match biblical animal prophecies often find themselves involved in Middle Eastern conflicts or policies affecting Hebrew heritage claims. Could national symbols reflect divine assignments that will become clear in the prophetic timeline? Across, the eagle dominates American iconography. Many Hebrew Israelites regard the eagle on the Great Seal as confirmation that the nation has a prophetic role in offering refuge during the tribulation. Yet others warn that imperial birds can shift from guardian to predator. The tension keeps prophecy students awake at night. Have you asked yourself whether the eagle in your national flag signifies protection or impending judgment? The answer may depend on our collective choices in the years ahead. The American eagle's symbolism becomes more complex when viewed through Hebrew Israelite eyes. Some see it as the protective eagle of Exodus and Revelation, while others identify it with the eagle wings of Daniel's first beast. The copper fragment suggests that national symbols will reveal their true prophetic significance during the approach of end times events. As America's policies toward Hebrew Israelite heritage claims and Middle Eastern affairs evolve, the eagle's true identity may become clear. Will it soar as protector or swoop as predator? Peacemakers gravitate toward the lamb. Christian and Hebrew Israelite activists gather each spring in Washington, D.C. carrying plush lambs, singing Isaiah chapter 11 over loudspeakers, and urging lawmakers to pursue reconciliation. I joined them last year and felt the power of simple innocence confronting complex politics. When a passerby mocked the group, a young woman responded, "Sir, a lamb once silenced lions." Why? Her confidence reminded me of Revelation chapter 5. Where a slain lamb unlocks the seals that bewildered the mighty. Could gentleness be the key that disarms global violence? The lamb symbolism carries special significance for Hebrew Israelites who view themselves as having been led like sheep to slaughter throughout history. Yet they also claim the promise that the lamb will ultimately triumph and lead them to living waters. During Passover celebrations, Hebrew Israelite families often discuss the parallel between the sacrificial lamb that protected their ancestors in Egypt and the future victory of the lamb in Revelation. Could their historical suffering be preparation for their role in the lamb's millennial kingdom? Animal symbols possess a unifying charm. During an interfaith summit in Ethiopia, I witnessed rabbis, pastors, imams, and traditional priests swapping stories about lions in their sacred texts. Laughter replaced suspicion as they discovered common ground in their metaphors. Perhaps God chose animals precisely because they transcend linguistic and cultural divides. When we meditate on shared symbols, walls crumble. Could the path to end times harmony run through the stable, the sky, and the field? The unifying power of animal symbolism suggests a divine strategy for preparing humanity for global transformation. As different religious communities discover their shared reverence for lions, eagles, lambs, barriers begin to dissolve. Hebrew Israelites often serve as bridges in these conversations, their unique perspective helping others see familiar symbols in new prophetic contexts. Could the widespread appearance of animal symbolism in dreams, art, and popular culture be heaven's way of preparing hearts for unprecedented unity? Serious application begins with study. I challenge every viewer to read Isaiah chapter 11, Daniel chapter 7, and Revelation chapter 5 aloud this week, listening for fresh echoes between the passages. In my own reading, I annotate every mention of an animal with colored ink: gold for lions, blue for doves, for nymphs. Patterns leap off the page. Try it, and share your discoveries in the comments section. Our channel community thrives on the sparks you ignite. The study methodology I recommend involves creating visual maps that connect animal references across different biblical books. Start with a large sheet of paper divided into sections for each major prophet, then use colored lines to trace animal symbolism from book to book. Many viewers have reported breakthrough insights using this approach, discovering prophetic sequences they never noticed in traditional verse-by-verse study. Could visual learning unlock prophetic understanding that linear reading misses? Embracing heritage through symbols can transform daily life. One grandmother from Houston wrote that she tapes a small lion sticker on her bathroom mirror as a morning reminder that fear does not own her. A teenager in London places a dove icon on his phone lock screen to combat online rage. Such practical acts weave biblical prophecy into mundane moments, proving that faith is not locked in ancient parchment but alive in emojis and refrigerator magnets. Where will you place your prophetic reminder? The integration of ancient symbols into modern life creates opportunities for constant spiritual reinforcement. Hebrew Israelite families often decorate their homes with animal artwork, wear clothing featuring prophetic creatures, and choose pets that reflect their spiritual aspirations. The children growing up in these environments develop natural comfort with biblical symbolism, seeing prophetic truth as accessible rather than academic. Could early exposure to animal prophecy prepare younger generations for roles they will play in end-times events? Animal prophecy also nudges us toward environmental stewardship. If lions, eagles, and lambs carry sacred messages, how can we ignore their endangerment? Hebrew Israelites in Georgia partner with wildlife sanctuaries to rehabilitate injured birds of prey, seeing each restored wing as a rehearsal for Revelation chapter 12. When I released a healed owl at dusk, its silent flight felt like a whispered vow that creation will be liberated alongside you. Caring for animals becomes both moral duty and prophetic rehearsal. The environmental dimension of animal prophecy extends beyond conservation to include preparation for millennial conditions, when predators will live peacefully with prey. Some Hebrew Israelite communities have established experimental farms where they practice raising traditional biblical animals according to Levitical guidelines, anticipating the restoration of temple-related activities. While controversial among those who see such practices as outdated, participants view their work as preparing for prophetic fulfillment. Could caring for animals today be training for roles we will play in the restored creation? Finally, I invite you to join our growing online forum, Decoded, where thousands dissect animal symbolism, compare manuscript findings, and share dreams that might fit the end times puzzle. Use the hashtag prophetic animals to post artwork, test, or question. Each contribution strengthens our collective discernment. Remember, no insight is too small. A single feather can signal the arrival of an entire eagle. Our online community has documented hundreds of animal-related prophetic dreams and visions from members across 6 continents. Patterns are emerging that suggest coordinated spiritual activity preparing specific communities for their roles in approaching events. The interactive dream journal allows members to compare their experiences with others, often revealing striking similarities despite geographical separation. Could heaven be distributing pieces of a prophetic puzzle that will become clear when assembled by our global community? Celebration crowns the journey. Across America and Africa, Hebrew Israelite congregations end Sabbath service with the Lion and the Lamb chant, alternating roars and gentle bleats until laughter erupts and unity swells. I recently joined a gathering in Philadelphia where Jewish and Christian musicians added shofar blasts to the rhythm. The sound rolled like thunder, then softened into cooing doves. I sensed heaven leaning close. These celebration rituals often include spontaneous prophetic utterances that feature animal imagery. Participants describe feeling as though different animals are speaking through them, delivering messages of encouragement, warning, or instruction. While some observers dismiss these experiences as emotional enthusiasm, the theological content and prophetic accuracy of many utterances suggest supernatural origin. Could these celebrations be providing practice for the time when animals will literally speak God's messages? Sharing this vision multiplies its impact. After the premiere of our last episode on animal prophecy, viewers from 60 countries flooded the comment section with stories of unexpected encounters with wildlife that sparked spiritual reflection. One truck driver spotted a lamb standing calmly beside a busy highway at dawn and took it as confirmation that peace will soon prevail. Post those experiences with our new hashtag #ProphecyInAtures so researchers can catalog emerging patterns. The global response to our animal prophecy content has revealed a hunger for this teaching that spans cultural and denominational boundaries. Comments arrive in dozens of languages, translated by viewers eager to share their insights with the broader community. The consistency of themes across diverse cultures suggests universal recognition of prophetic animal symbolism. Could the Spirit be using our channel to connect scattered pieces of prophetic understanding preserved in communities worldwide? We are approaching the finish line of this investigation, yet the real adventure begins with you. Will you watch the skies in 2026 for the promised procession? Will you steward the animals under your care as living parables? We let lion courage, eagle perspective, peace, and lamb innocence guide your daily choices. What I have shared tonight is both invitation and alarm. The copper fragment insists that creation itself will announce the final chapter, but only those who recognize the language of animals will understand the script. If this exploration has ignited your curiosity, subscribe for upcoming field reports as I chase new leads, from desert monastic libraries to genetic labs decoding ancestral secrets. Share this video with everyone who loves scripture, animals, or epic mystery. Add your voice to our global discussion. Have you ever wondered why that neighborhood cat stares at the sunset as if expecting someone? Perhaps it knows more than we think. The Hebrew Israelites carried these symbols across millennia of hardship, guarding them like living scrolls for the climactic age. Now those symbols stand before us, roaring, soaring, cooing, and bleeding their testimony. The question is not whether the animals are speaking. The question is whether we will choose to listen. My dear friends, as we conclude this remarkable journey through prophetic animal symbolism, I am compelled to share one final urgent revelation. The copper fragment contains a warning that those who ignore the animal signs will be caught unprepared when the prophetic timeline accelerates. It describes a period of intense spiritual awakening accompanied by supernatural animal appearances that will test every person's readiness for what follows. The Hebrew Israelites have preserved this knowledge through centuries of persecution, maintaining their watch for these very signs we are beginning to witness. The convergence of archaeological discovery, genetic research, astronomical alignment, and spontaneous spiritual experiences suggests we are entering the prophetic season the ancients foresaw. The animals are taking their positions on the stage of history. The question that remains is whether we will recognize our cue and step into the roles we were born to play. The Hebrew Israelites are ready. The question is, are you?